Hey nerdy knitters, thanks for joining me for another episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. Get your favorite beverage and your knitting and let's settle in for a good chat. Everything we discuss, you'll find linked down below in the video description box. I do have a bit of knitting news to share this week. I have a pattern that's been released on the Biscott Yarns website, the Bis Bias Infinity Scarf. It uses two skeins of their yarn in a nice contrasting colors, a bit of stockinette, a bit of texture. It's worked flat, then it has an I-cord edge, and you use a provisional cast on and graft the two ends together to get this long infinity scarf. But there's also instructions for just a regular scarf as well, and it is also knit on the bias, so you get that fun bias shaping as well. I think it's still a pretty relaxing knit because the stitch patterns are really simple. So if that's something that interests you, or if you've got a stash of sock yarn that you'd like to use up, then you can go check out that pattern. I'll have the link down below. And I just finished recording another video this morning on knitting when you're on a budget, or just saving money on your knitting. Not sure what the title is going to be yet, but last week I had asked for your tips about how you save money, and goodness, there were so many great tips to share. So I organized them all and I recorded that video this morning, so that will be coming out within the next few weeks. I'm not quite sure. I don't really have it on the calendar yet, but pretty soon. So thank you so much for sharing your tips with me. There were so many great tips that it was really fun to record that, and all of these things that I had not thought of, different ways to save money. So you'll want to check out that when it comes out. But anyway, thank you for sharing your tips with me. So what I've been reading, I decided to share that these past few weeks, I guess, and I've had a lot of comments from other readers as well. So I think I'm going to keep this little segment in there to discuss books because I like to read, and hopefully you do too. And I always love to find new books. So if you have any book recommendations for me, then leave them down below. I like all genres, all types of books, nothing really graphically violent or anything like that, but pretty much anything else I'll read. Right now I've been slowly working my way through Agatha Christie books. I've almost finished, I think, all of the Miss Marple books, which have been fabulous. And of course, she is a knitter, and knitting comes up sometimes in those books as well. And I read something recently about Agatha Christie, because Miss Marple, if you're not aware of who she is, she's just the maiden aunt spinster lady that, she's older, that everybody loves. She lives in a little tiny town, but she has very deep insight into the human character and solves crimes and mysteries, and she's just a brilliant, brilliant old lady. But I read that Agatha Christie, after the creation of her character, Miss Marple, she regrets that she started with her so old, because she could only go so far with the books before, Miss Marple would just be really ancient and too old to be plausible for the stories. So I thought that was really interesting that she wished she had started her as a slightly younger character, so she could have written more books about her, because I guess the books were so popular. And I can see why. They're fabulous stories, and Miss Marple is a gem. So I've been also watching the old TV series, I guess. I don't know if it was like a mini series, or each episode is like a movie length, an hour and a half, I think, or so. So I've been getting each season from the library and watching those, but we just got BritBox, so I think I have them on there. I'm going to watch them on there. My husband's not a fan. It's a little too slow for him. He likes more action. But he is watching Poirot with me, which we really like. We really like David Suchet. He is like Poirot. Like, nobody else can play Poirot for me. I've tried watching other things, but he's just the perfect one. And I'm working through that book series as well, the Poirot series. I don't know how many. I think I've read like 20 of them. She's really written a lot of books. So some I like better than the others. The one I just finished was called Sad Cypress, and that was a really good one. Total, there's always like red herrings in the story where you think it's going to turn out one way and then it doesn't. And this one, I totally missed who had done it. I thought somebody else had it all worked out in my head. I was totally wrong. So I like it when that happens, because I like to be surprised, and something that I thought was a more predictable story, and it wasn't quite. But there were clues, and I didn't pick up on them. So stupid me, but I liked that one. Sad Cypress was the name of that one. It's a Poirot story. But yes, Agatha Christie, wonderful author. Some stories are so-so, some are just fabulous. I love them. And of course, like all of the TV adaptations to watch those as well. So that's what's on my reading pile this week. So we do have some knitting questions to answer this week. Trico Tom, I'm not even going to try to say the rest. I think it's an Italian username on YouTube, but her question anyway is, are there acrylic yarn for socks? And I did find some, but I think you said you're in Italy, so I'm not sure how easily you'll be able to find some of these, but I know some of them you can buy online. There is the Wisdom Yarns Allegro, which is 93% acrylic and then 7% PBT. I forgot to look that up. I'm not sure what PBT is, but that's an acrylic sock yarn. And then there is a Loops and Threads Perfect Pair. Now I can find this at Michael's. I'm not sure where else it's available, but this one is 23% viscose from bamboo, 7% polyester, and then 70% acrylic. And then there is the Yarn Bee Cozy Toes. Now this is a Hobby Lobby brand. This is 93% acrylic and 7% polyester. And then there's Barocco Comfort Sock. That's 50-50 nylon acrylic. So there are acrylic sock yarns out there. I've never used any, so I can't say how hard wearing they are or how they feel on the feet. But if anybody has knit with acrylic sock yarn, can you leave a comment and tell us what that's like to knit with them and how they wear and how they feel? Are they soft? Are they hard on the feet? I mean, even wool can be. Goodness, there was one brand, I can't remember what it was now, but I did not like the way it felt. It felt like there were wires underneath. It was just so hard. But what was that one called? It might have been Heart and Soul, a red heart yarn. It was not soft at all. I can't remember how it wore because I hardly wear them because they just don't feel very comfortable on my feet. They're very rough feeling. Not rough, but just like wiry bits. I'm not sure how to explain that, but just not comfortable to wear. So I'm just curious to know how acrylic is and does it hold up very well to wear. But anyway, if you know, then please let us know. But those are some acrylics I saw, or if you know of an acrylic sock yarn, leave it down below. I think I'll do another roundup of sock yarns. I did a video for affordable sock yarns with some different brands, but maybe it's time for another video like that. Okay, and then last week we had a question from Scripture for Women about using, or natural fibers are not always affordable, they're expensive. So she was looking for synthetic yarns that have a comparable drape. I didn't have much advice for her because it really depends on the acrylic itself, but Rhonda left a comment that she's found that acrylic yarns that have a sheen and a clearly defined twist have a good drape. So maybe that's a clue to look for when you're looking at acrylic yarns. Look for something that has a sheen and a really good twist. And her example is the Wool Like by Loops and Threads. And also her other tip is put the acrylic in the dryer on low heat, and that can loosen the gauge and create lots more drape. And it can help grow the project too. And then once stretched, it stays stretched. So that is worth trying out as well. So perhaps knitting on larger needles and then putting it in the dryer. That's something to try. But definitely her tip about looking for something with a sheen and a high twist. And that would give good drape. So thank you for that tip, Rhonda. And then Scripture for Women also had another question about why you would use 2 strands of yarn held together. And we discussed that last week as well. But Cindy left a comment for one of the reasons that you would hold 2 strands together, besides getting a different yarn weight, would, if they're variegated yarns, it can reduce some of that color pooling. Sometimes you like the color pooling or the flashing or whatever it's called. You get those really fun designs, but sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want. So if you hold 2 colors together, then it can reduce some of that as well. We had other reasons for it, but if you know of other reasons for holding 2 yarns together, you're more than welcome to tell us about it. And then last week I had joked about knitting with your pet fur, and I didn't realize that this is actually a thing. I can't say that I would want to knit with my dog's fur. She's a beagle. She sheds a lot. I had no idea about that either. I thought since she had short hair, she wouldn't shed very much, but never having had a beagle before, but she sheds a lot. And it's probably about that time when she's going to start shedding again. But Mary Ann left this comment that Belfast Mini Mills in PEI, they spin yarn from pet hair. So they rinse the hair in borax to get rid of that dog smell. And then she says in 2017, they were charging $50 a pound to produce the yarn from your pet's hair. You could do dog or cat. And there were other sites online that show you how to do it yourself, although she assumes you have to know how to spin. But you can also buy it pre-made. There is a 2-ounce skein of DK weight, about 125 yards, that is made with about 75 samayad, I don't know how to say that, and 25% merino. And this is $45 Canadian. And apparently Shiangora, which is the fancy name for yarn made from dog hair, is 42% warmer than wool. So, and she says I should add it to my list of animal fiber yarns. I don't think I'm going to, but it's actually a thing. Who knew? Well, I guess maybe she did. Mary Ann did, but I had no idea. So I'm not sure if Belfast Mini Mills still does this, but if that's something you'd like to try, then it wouldn't hurt to check it out. So you'd have to save up your dog's fur and send it to them. A pound of fur. That seems like it would be a lot of fur to get to a pound. But I mean, 42% warmer than wool. I wonder if it depends on the dog breed, or if it's all just sort of warmer than wool. That's kind of interesting. But anyway, if anybody's ever done that, I would really like to know. Like, that intrigues me. But no, I am not going to be adding dog hair to our list of animal fibers to discuss. Oh, and one last thing. With our discussion last week, we discussed acrylic yarn. And Deb left a comment that she purchased from Stitches West an iron that's specifically for blocking acrylic. It's called a Euro Steam, and it does really well using a cool steam setting to block acrylic yarns. So if anybody is looking for something that is suitable for acrylics, then a Euro Steam might be the thing to go for. And that leads us right into our knitting discussion for the week. We have been discussing synthetic fibers. Last week we talked about acrylic, and this week we're going to wrap up with 2 more, nylon and polyester. So the process for these fibers is the same as acrylic. You start with whatever petrochemical based material. I don't know what the material is. It's not a natural material. It's some sort of synthetic thing that is melted and blended, and then it's extruded through spinnerets to create filament threads, and then these are bundled together, and then they are stretched and cut to imitate the staple length of other fibers before being combed and spun into yarn. So it ends up looking and feeling like real natural fibers. And of course, the process has been refined. Nylon has been around for a long time, the 20s maybe, I'm not sure, or sooner, or later, earlier. I don't know. So nylon's been around for a while, but of course, I mean, the process now is probably changed and adjusted over time. So they are probably different than they were originally. But first off, we have polyester. We'll start with that. Now this is often used for novelty yarns like the fun fur, that fuzzy blanket yarns, or chenille. They're usually made out of this polyester fiber. You can find it blended with other fibers to create lightweight, strong garments that have good elasticity as well as being easy to care for. Now, it's a good choice for garments that will need to be washed and dried often, like kids' clothes or baby items or knit items that you're going to donate, or things around your house, you know, that you, like if you knit blankets for around the house and you just want to throw them in the wash. Now, the advantages are that it's easy to care for, it's inexpensive, it holds its shape very well, and it's strong and elastic. So that's why you'll see it combined sometimes with plant fibers, because they're strong too, but they're not elastic, so they can tend to droop and stretch over time and they don't bounce back. But if they're combined with polyester, then that gives it some of that elasticity and bounce back. But they do have a disadvantage. They have a tendency to shrink if exposed to high heat. So like all synthetic fibers, because they're sort of plastic based, that high heat can actually melt the fibers themselves. So that is a disadvantage for that. And then we have nylon. Now, nylon is added for strength and durability and elasticity. That's why you often see it added to sock yarns, to add some durability, to add some elasticity. It can also be used in novelty yarns, sometimes as that strong central core that holds the other fibers together. So when you've got like lots of floofy or fluffy yarns, then the core of that will be a nylon thread, and then all of the other fibers can be added onto it in some way. Now this one can also be blended with plant fibers to give it some of that elasticity that plant fibers lack. So advantages of a nylon are they're strong, it's durable, it's elastic, lightweight, and easy to care for. But like polyester and acrylic, it is heat sensitive, and it could even melt if it has like a heat source applied directly, just like acrylic would. So that wraps up our discussion about the different fibers. And I think next week we're going to talk a little bit about yarn spinning and plying and yarn construction itself. Not much, because I don't spin, and I only know, I mean, as much as I know from a book without having to actually spin myself. But that yarn structure can play an important part in like yarn substitution, because perhaps whenever you buy a knitting pattern, you use the recommended yarn, but I think a lot of time, I'm not sure, this would be a nice survey too. Do you use the yarn the pattern recommends, or do you substitute with something else? I think we're gonna have a survey. But for me, I hardly ever use the recommended yarn. I'm usually substituting, but the yarn construction can play an important role. It can play an important role in the choice for substituting yarns. For like a high example, like you would say, like a single ply yarn, which is just one single strand. It's really light and floofy and you can really break them easily sometimes. You wouldn't want to switch that with like a 3-ply really high twist yarn. They're totally different structures, even if they're both 100% wool. The structure of the yarn itself can affect your final project. So I think we're going to discuss that next, and then we'll wrap it up with like what you should know about substituting yarns. But I think the fiber discussion is a good place to start. And we've done that. So after those, I'm not sure what discussion we'd like to have. So if you have any ideas for things that would take a week or 2 or 3 to discuss, then please let me know, and we can discuss whatever topic, knitting topic that you would like to. But I think next will be about the structure of the yarn. That might take a week or 2 or 3, we'll see. And then yarn substitution. Then after that, I don't know. So if you've got ideas, I would love to know. Now, before I share what's on my knitting needles, I just want to talk about this week's sponsor, which is Knit Picks. They are having a 20% off a site-wide sale. So if you have been putting things on your Knit Picks wish list or in your shopping cart and just leaving them there, this weekend might be a good time to actually go ahead and purchase those things, because everything site-wide is 20% off through May 8th, Sunday, I believe. Okay, so I have finished all of the pieces for my daughter's cardigan. This is one of the sleeves right here. We were holding up the pieces the other day just to make sure everything would fit properly and we could decide how wide the button band should be. But my next step is to figure out how to put these together, and I have been working on a little science experiment. Here is one of the swatches right there. I knit 6 little swatches. Okay, this is the machine wash and dry. I did one as a control. So this is sort of my control swatch. This is what it looks straight off the needles without any sort of washing or blocking to it. And then this was the one for the ball band. That's what it recommends. So I did that. And of course, the fabric looks great. I think the fabric really looks nice on this one. But of course, for seaming, it's not great. And then I did 4 more. But before I show you those, I do want to say my reason for doing this, of course, was to see the best way to like straighten out the edges. But I also want to have a nice fabric at the end instead of, like straight off the needles. Even in acrylic, sometimes it doesn't look so great. And I don't want to accidentally set those fibers when they're not looking. their best. And I know, like with steam, that's supposed to set the fibers, and until they are relaxed and in their natural state, I don't want to set them, I don't think. So, but anyway, so I did these swatches while I was watching Sanditon the other day. I had saved all the episodes so I could binge watch over 2 days. I think I like the first season better. Anyway, if you've watched Sanditon, what did you think of this season? So these are my 4 swatches. So I've got this one up here is the wet block. I will be unpinning these this afternoon, but I'm going to record that so we can see close up how they look. So this up here is the soak for 20 minutes in lukewarm water, wring it out, not wring it out, squeeze it out, and then pin it. I didn't stretch it or anything like that, just the shape it wanted to be, and then just pinned it out flat. And then this one over here is a spray block. So I pinned it out first. I didn't stretch it. I tried to leave them the shape they wanted to be, just pinned them, and then sprayed it a lot until it was very wet. Then I sort of used a paper towel to get like my pins dry. I didn't want to leave them all wet. And then down here is the one I used steam on. So I pinned it out, same as the others, and then lightly steamed it. I didn't want to go nuts with the steam and like melt it or something. And then over here, I wanted to do another little test. I know a lot of people are like, I knit this too small, can I? And everybody's like, oh, block it larger. Like, does that really work? I'm not sure. I have, my bias is to assume that that knitted fabric is going to go back to the shape it was actually knit in, that you can only stretch it so far. So not much I can learn on a tiny swatch, but I thought I wanted to see. So I stretched it when I pinned it out as much as I could. So I'm curious to see what that's going to be like when I unpin it. Like, is it going to stay stretched out, or is it going to just like go back down to size? And then maybe it'll stay stretched out for like a few days, but then it'll shrink down. I don't know. I have them all tagged so I can keep an eye on them over the next few days. So I'm going to record that this afternoon anyway. I'm going to unpin them and look at them and decide which methods I want to use for the sweater, because I've got the 2 things I want to like the washing and blocking is supposed to relax your fibers and help them settle down and even out your tension, which I want that, but I also need to straighten out the edges so I can sew it. So I know, I'm fairly sure that steam will work best for straightening it out, but I also don't want it to set the fibers when they're not relaxed and nice looking. Do you know what I mean? So I think I might combine 2. I haven't decided because they're still pinned and I want to unpin them first to see how if they'll hold their shape. But like looking at the fabric, the steam one actually doesn't look that bad. But I think no, that's my control. I think like washing and drying them to hold it out with everything else. But I think washing and drying it actually helped the stitches even out the most. Just that movement in the washer and dryer, I guess. And there's still a little bit of like rowing out down there. But I think I'm going to end up combining 2 methods. One for like relaxing and setting the fibers, and then another method for actually straightening them, because like if this is the method for relaxing the fibers and making the fabric look good, it's absolutely worthless at straightening the edges to sew them up. So it might be a combination of 2 methods. I actually am curious about this stretched out one though. I wonder if like that's going to like really make the fabric look nice. If it bounces back into shape, I'm wondering if the stitches will look really good where I've stretched it out and then allow it to go back. Like maybe the stitches will look really nice in that. Like the 2 up here, these wet, I don't know if you can see on there, but like looking at the fabric, comparing it to this swatch, I don't think it looks as good. Like I can see more issues in the fabric. I see less issues in the steam blocking one, but my concern there is that I would set the fibers even if there were issues. So I don't know. We're going to see this afternoon when I unpin them, and I will decide which methods I'm going to use for that sweater. And then the next thing will be to apply those methods to the sweater pieces itself. And then I can get started on the shawl collar, which I've been trying to figure out how to do, because you use short rows for a shawl collar to build up the top part of the collar and not the whole button band. You only want a bigger collar up here. And you can use lengthening short rows or shortening short rows. And all that means is like shortening short rows is you start out super long. So you would start out, you use a V-neck shape, and you would start your, say you would start your points here, and this is the part you're building up. You would start here, work all the way around the collar to the other side, do your short row, come around to the other side, do a short row, and then do a short row, and then they get slowly shorter. So they're shortening. So you start out long and you get shorter. So you get like sort of a triangle shape, and that builds up the shawl collar. You can also do it the other way, where you start with short rows and then you work longer or lengthening short rows. So you would have your 2 points, but you would start working and you would end like back here on your neck, and then you would work to this neck, and then you would work a little further and then work a little further this way and then this way, and until you're down to that point. So it's sort of an upside down triangle. You start with the point in the back, and then you start to grow larger from there. And both methods are valid and can be used for knitting a shawl collar. So I just have to decide which direction I want to go. I guess it really doesn't matter. I don't know. I mean, they'll both work. I don't know why one it would be preferable to the other when it comes to doing a shawl collar. I don't know. Like, is there one that's better, or are they both about the same? I have no idea, but that's the next step, is to get everything washed and blocked, sew up the pieces, and then get the collar sorted out. And we haven't even got the buttons yet, so I haven't even thought about like which type of buttonhole to use or how big they should be. My daughter does say she wants like 1-inch buttons. She wants good sized buttons. So I think probably 5 buttons on the front will be enough, but we haven't picked them out yet. So we have to take a trip to like our local fabric store this weekend and take a bit of yarn or one of these swatches with us and pick out the buttons for that. So that is what's happening with that project. So I am making a video of this whole testing process. I recorded like putting all of the swatches on the blocking mat, and I'm going to record this afternoon taking them off and comparing them. So that will be a video in the future as well. And I also have a finished object, surprisingly. The shawl that I have been working on, I chose the final stitch pattern and finished the whole thing. Like, it is done now. So this is the Color Adventure Asymmetrical Triangle Shawl. The top-down triangle version will be coming out in June. And this one, I don't know when, we'll see, but it's using the same colorway. It's Whiskey in a Teacup is the colorway. It's from Gauge Dye Works. The top-down triangle shawl uses their merino cashmere nylon sock yarn. This one uses a 2-ply fingering. Same colors, just a different yarn. And it's really interesting to try the 2 different yarns. You can really feel the difference. Like the sock yarn has more of like a drapey feel to it, I guess, because it was, I don't know, that this one's a superwash as well. They're both superwash yarns, but I guess just the yarn structure itself is affecting. This one feels more sturdy, even though I use the same size needles. So the fabric should be about the same, but it starts up here at a point, and it does have more of a curl to the top edge because I worked extra increases along the top. So it moves through different stitch patterns. Every time the color changes, you change stitch patterns. But really simple, just 2-row repeats for all of them. And then the gray section. Now, we had so much trouble with this. I had so much trouble with this. I tried, I think I have 3 or 4 pages crossed out, and I do like just a notebook I use, and I jot down what I'm doing. And I tried different things on here. Nothing seemed to be working, but I finally picked something. So it starts with an eyelet ridge right there. And then really simple texture, but it looks nice, I think. Enough texture to keep it interesting. And then I repeated the eyelets and finished with a bit of garter stitch and the picot bind off. Really needs a good blocking and a nice stretch, but there it is. So it's a very long wingspan. There's the other tip right there, curling up. So it's very long. Can't really show it all in here. There we go. But not super deep. But that's what I like in a shawl. I don't like a really deep and not wide. They feel like a bib, honestly. Like when you wear them with all the triangle is in the front, they don't look, I don't know. But I have a larger bust, so I think that probably makes it look more bib-like. I guess women with smaller busts can get away with lots of bulky fabric around their neck right there, but I can't do it. So I prefer a long wingspan and not as much depth, and then I can wear it more like a scarf or around my back. But anyway, that is finished. It just needs a good soak and a block. So I have made no progress on the convertible mitts that I'm making for my father-in-law. I still have to add the tops to them. I haven't even thought about it because I've been thinking about my daughter's cardigan and the right way to block acrylic yarn. So I guess that will be on hold for a bit until I get the sweater back on the needles. And then I have wristlets that I've been working on, and those are off the needles. And I mean, not off finished, off in, I hated doing corrugated ribbing on such a small number of stitches. So I have all of this yarn that I'm using. It's leftover Knit Picks palette. And I think I've got 8 different skeins of yarn. And it's the yarn I used to knit my level 3 Fair Isle Stranded Colorwork tam, so which doesn't take much yarn. 1 hat, 8 skeins. I got a lot of leftovers, at least half a skein of each, but not enough. Like I was going to knit some Colorwork mittens, but most of the ones I liked were only 2 colors, and you needed a full skein of each color, and I don't have a full skein. So I decided it would be fun to just take the design that I used on the tam and knit some wrist warmers. I'm not doing thumb gussets or anything like that. So not full-on fingerless mitts or anything, just wrist warmers, just a tube basically. The stitch pattern works just fine, but I'm not sure what to do along the cast on and bind off edges. Like I was going to do corrugated ribbing to match the hat, and I started that, but I really disliked doing that on such few stitches. I'm working using magic loop, which is what I prefer when I'm doing stranded colorwork on something small. I tried DPNs, and I don't like double pointed needles for stranded colorwork. I use them for other things, but not for small stranded colorwork things. I don't know why that's an issue, but I don't like the corrugated rib. That's a 2-color rib. Like you alternate between a knit and a purl stitch, but each, like you do 1 color in a knit stitch, and then you use the other color for the purl stitch, and you just repeat that around. And I don't know, I really don't like doing that on magic loop. I don't know why. So I just ripped it out, and it's still in the bag. I've been thinking about what to do instead. And a few ideas was just to do like just one of the colors, just a plain rib, 1 color, and then start the stranded colorwork pattern. My other idea was to do a Latvian braid at the beginning and then at the end. And I think I had one more idea. It might have been to combine do a little bit of ribbing and then a Latvian braid and then the stranded colorwork section. So I haven't decided which one to go with, and it's sort of been in the back of my mind. I haven't really made a decision yet. So I feel like I need something mindless to knit right now because everything is like decision-making knitting, and I need something I don't have to think about. The shawl was that. Once I had the pattern sorted, that last section was just flying right off my needles because it was just knit and watch Jeopardy with my daughter at night. You know, I don't have to think about it. But right now I don't have any projects like that. So I think I need to pull out some yarn. I've got a few skeins on the wall behind me that need projects. But if they're for designs, which do require some thought first. So anyway, that's all that's on my knitting needles, and I've got lots coming up. I'm going to be designing a lace scarf, waiting on the yarn for that. And I've got some yarn, back there on that board that are for some upcoming designs, but they're not like, I can't just sit and relax knit. I'm going to think knit, you know? So that's everything I've been knitting. I don't think there's anything else, but we do have to get a bit nerdy and talk about a book, right? So this week's recommendation is this book by Nikki Epstein. And Nikki Epstein has been in the knitting world for a long time, I guess. More than 20 books this woman has written. She's an influential teacher who travels nationally and internationally to lecture and give workshops on knitting design and technique. Her distinctive and innovative work has been recognized and recreated worldwide, and she's been published in lots of different books and magazines, and published her own books and magazines, and this is one of her books, and it is so much fun. If you want to move beyond like basic rib edgings, you want to add something interesting to your shawls or your garments or any project, she has a series of these books for edgings, but I think this one is like a compilation of those books. So it looks like this. There's a few edging ideas, and it has the written instructions for them. I'm not sure there's charts in here now that I think about it. So it's divided into a few different sections. There's ribs and fringe, ruffles, lace, flora, points and picots, cords, corners and edges, appliques, colors, and nouveau. So they're all just really like out of the box methods for just working an edge, you know, something different. Like adding some lace. Or, oh, I really like these, and I have a mitten idea that I'd like to use for them. But it's just twisting it along the edge, like you work some of the stitches and then you twist them and work some more, and it creates this really cool twist. I really like that. So it's just full of ideas like that. Oh, or leaves. I really like the leaves. I'm not sure where I would ever use them, maybe on a scarf, but and of course things like ruffles. So it's got the directions, and it tells you which direction they have to be worked, like if you work top down or bottom up or anything like that. Or the multiple that you need. So it's really like, so if you're a designer, then it's useful for that, different ways to do something unique on your patterns. But if you're just a knitter, if you're a knitter and you like to change things up on a pattern, then this can be a really fun way to do that, like add a different sort of cuff or hem or ruffles along your cuff, hem, sleeves, something, get the words out. But it's really cool, and Nikki Epstein has been in the knitting world for a long time, and I don't know, just really cool things in here. So if you want to add to your knitting library and you're looking for something new, then Nikki Epstein's The Essential Edgings Collection, 500 of her favorite original borders. But I'm fairly sure she has different edging books, and this is sort of the compilation book. And just one announcement to close with, I have been working on the Fixing Your Knitting Mistakes course and re-recording one of the videos, the lace swatch video where we drop down and fix a whole section of lace. It was sort of blurry and out of frame, and the recording wasn't that great. So I just redid that recording this week, and I have to finish editing and uploading it, and then the course will be completely finished except for like a bonus section. I want to add a section of how to recognize a certain mistake, like if you didn't complete a stitch in one row, what that would look like on the next row and how to fix it. Things like that. Like it's more of the how to recognize the mistake itself. Like I know a lot of times you can look at your project and see, oh, I did something wrong, but you're not quite sure what you did wrong. So I think just having like little short videos of this is what this mistake looks like and this is how to fix it. So that's the only part I haven't worked out yet. So the whole course has 6 modules, I think. Like the first one goes over reading your knitting, because you can't fix your mistakes until you can actually read it and see what's going on. So and it's a free like the first video is free, so you can watch that and get an idea of what the whole course is like, really. But that will like explain what's happening on your needles, and then it goes into, I don't have it in front of me, so I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, the knit and purl stitch and how to recognize those and how to work them. But then it goes into like basic mistakes, how to tink back, how to frog back, how to do a lifeline, how to rip out your work back to your lifeline, all of those basic things. And then it's fixing different stitch patterns, dropping down to fix stitches in like stockinette, but then also in like seed stitch. And then fixing sections of stitches. If you messed up some ribbing, like 4 or 6 stitches, how to drop down those that section without ripping out the whole project. And it all includes, there's 3 different swatches that you'll knit. One of them is like 4 different stitch patterns, and that's the one we practice dropping down to fixed stitches in those different stitch patterns. And then there's a section on increases and decreases, how to read them, and then how to tink back, like if you just made a mistake 1 or 2 rows, how to tink that back, or how to drop down and fix them or add them. If you didn't put one in, or if you put the wrong one in, how to do those, like if it's further down in your work without ripping everything back, how to drop down and add them or fix them. And then all of that culminates in like this lace swatch. Because once you can do those other fixes, actually fixing a section of simple lace is not that difficult. It's just a combination of those things. So that's the final video that I just finished. And then there's a bonus video on edge stitches. Like if you have to fix like 3 stitches right along the edge, what that looks like, or even just 1 stitch. So how to do that in garter stitch and a stockinette, I think, I don't remember now. So the final thing to do is add this bonus section of, and I really thought that would be important, like how to recognize a mistake, because I mean, sometimes you make one and you're like, I have no clue what mistake that even is. So how can you fix it if you don't know what it is? So that's the only thing left to work on, and I'm trying to brainstorm like the types of things that should go in that list, but keeping it to basic fixes. We're not getting into brioche or cables. I want to stick to basic fixes. And then maybe later on we'll add like a separate little mini course that covers the advanced things. But I think those are best suited to like a course on that specific topic. Like for brioche, it feels like that would be better suited to a whole like mini course just on brioche. But I'm not sure. We'll see. But that's it for the announcements that I have to make. And the course is open and ready to purchase. I'll put a link down below if you want to purchase that and learn to fix your knitting mistakes. I'm going to have like an official launch, I guess, in a few weeks when everything is ready, but it is for sale now, just sort of like a soft launch. So people who can click the link and check it out if they want to. Anyway, so that's it for this episode of the Nerdy Knitting Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And if you're new here or you just want to catch up on past episodes, I'll put a playlist right here, and I'll see you in the next video.